All right, Bio 11. Welcome to our last lecture in the evolution unit. It's on diversification and extinctions. Basically, what we're going to be talking about today are mass extinction events, not just the extinction of one or two species, but a broader, much more impactful extinction event, like the type that would have, eradicated the dinosaurs and stuff like that. And then we're going to look at how diversification after these extinction events occur. It seems weird to think that we kill almost everything and then shortly thereafter there's a ton of everything living on the planet. So we'll see how that happens and why it happens today. So what we're going to be talking about today is macroevolution, right? We know that changes occur to species, in various degrees in response to environmental change. The environment throws you a curveball, the species responds to that curveball. Some can be quite drastic in terms of the size of the curveball. Others can be hardly noticeable, right? So you can have like an asteroid striking the Earth. Well, that's pretty drastic, right? That's a big change, and it's going to create a lot of change in a lot of different living things. And then there could be something where, the pH of the water goes up by, a few decimal places. And you're thinking, that's a small change. Is that going to affect something? Is that really going to cause an effect on something? For some creatures, no. But for others, yes. But a small change might only affect a couple of things, whereas the big change, like the asteroid hitting the Earth, it's going to impact everybody. And that's what we're talking about today, is the big change that a lot of people aren't ready for. So far we've looked at smaller changes that, impact one or two species, like, for example, the peppered moth, right? The soot and the ash on the trees that cause genetic drift within their population. The cheetah growing the longer legs to catch the antelope. The hummingbird matching the flower size, right? The hummingbird and the flower and the cheetah may not impact a whole lot of other species. One or two maybe, but for the most part, they're very localized. This is microevolution. We've used that term before. Today we're going to be talking about macroevolution, where the change is very, very significant and it brings about entirely new groups or new species, new taxa, levels of taxonomy, like classes and families and genera, plural for genus, that we've never seen before. Right? So entirely new creatures that we've never seen before. That's big. That's macroevolution. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And so when new groups or levels arise due to changes in a population or species, we say it's macroevolution. So mass extinctions equaling diversity. Like we said, it seems like a weird thing to say that this leads to this, but we've seen in history over and over again it does. There's a mass extinction event, and then diversification occurs shortly thereafter. So mass extinction dramatically alters the environment. It's not a 1 degree temperature change. It's not, half of a mark on the pH scale of water changing. It's something very, very drastic. And it leads to the death of an incredible number of species in a large geographical area. It's not just happening in one little valley or one little pocket of the desert. It's happening across an entire continent, right? Oddly, though, after every mass extinction, you see a noticeable increase in the amount of biodiversity, the amount of different living things that are there afterwards. So why is this? This is what we're going to be answering today. How does a whole lot of death lead to an abundance of life shortly thereafter? I'll have to fix that. Anyway, so here's a table that we have. In the table, this is the past, here's our present, and you can see as this gets wider, that's the number of living things, right? So if we were to draw this table and extend it backwards, it would actually look like this. And then it would go for a very long time, it would be very thin, then it would start to broaden out, and then there was a mass extinction. So you can see very few species. How wide this is the number of species. So there's very few species. Then we had our first mass extinction. And then shortly thereafter, you can see we broaden out again. So we recoup a lot of the species. And then there's another mass extinction. And then in a relatively short period of time again, it broadens out wider than it was before. And then we have another great mass extinction where tons and tons of things were killed. And then if you look here on the graph, the biodiversity gets right back, right? It pinches in here and we get it right back within a very short period of time. Boom, we're right back out there. Tons of living things. Then there's another extinction. But again, you can see it gets to its widest point. And then there's another mass extinction. And then we get to present day, where we're even wider. So each of these mass extinctions, here, 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 and here, killed tons and tons of creatures. And if you look, it took us a very, very long time just to get to this width. But then you start to see mass extinction, and it looks like it wipes out probably about 2/3 of what's living. Boom, we're right back at it. Look how wide this triangle is here at the base compared to this one. It's basically the same. We lose about half, boom, we're right back at it again, and now we're as wide as we ever were. Even though man is doing his best job to kind of screw things up for a lot of living things. But this kind of gets to the point that for some reason, a mass extinction occurs and then diversification blooms like crazy right after it. So why would this be? So, well, we know not everybody is killed. In these orange areas here, these are all of these survivors. Times got really, really tough. Mother Nature's checklist of how to survive got altered dramatically, but they were still able to get enough check marks on Mother Nature's checklist to survive and work their way through it. These new, harsher conditions, right? They are naturally selected, Mother Nature, and they are seen as fit, right? They have that level of fitness that they can continue. They can fit in the new conditions. The fit survivors now have whatever resources are available to themselves with little to no competition, right? I might have had several different things living in my habitat that wanted the same space, the same food, drank from the same water supply. We shared a lot of the resources, and I had to compete with them to survive. But if they couldn't survive the mass extinction event, now I don't have them as competition, right? And I might have had several competitors and even some predators that were trying to kill me and eat me, and now they're all gone. And it got really, really bad for them, but it got really good for me after the mass extinction event. So our numbers go way up. And when this happens, this can be a source of intraspecific competition, right? So our population survives, right? We've got resources. We're hitting all the check marks on Mother Nature's checklist. There's less competition for the stuff that we're trying to get check marks for. There's less predators trying to kill us and eat us to satisfy their check marks. And so our numbers of our species, the surviving species, go way up. But now the competition comes from within, right? Because members of the same species want the same stuff. So now, because there's so many of us, intraspecific competition goes way up. Now, what intraspecific means, intraspecific means competition within the same species. All right? The other type is interspecific. Interspecific is competition with other species. So for the fit survivors, a lot of their interspecific competitors died off. Their numbers go up, the survivors, and now they're experiencing intraspecific competition, right? So this is within your own species, and interspecific is with other species, competing with other species. So this one is starting to increase quite a bit. Numbers are getting up so high because we are so fit that now the resources are becoming depleted, not because of other species, but because of our own. Humans are kind of doing this if you think about it on the planet now, right? Our population numbers are going way, way up, and we all want kind of the same resources, right? And so you see where people go without resources, right? There are people that die of famine and they die of disease because they don't have access to, proper health care and stuff like that. That's because of intraspecific competition and partially greed and money, which is a totally different thing. But I wonder why that is happening with my points. Anyway, so what happens, right? This orange area, right here, right? I'll use this one. There's more room here. So we survive and our numbers start to go up. Well, that doesn't explain why we have more biodiversity after a short period of time. So the new environment, it has many unfilled niches. Remember, a lot of our competitors, they died. So we don't have any interspecific competition. So a lot of the competitors that wanted the same stuff as us and had some slightly different needs as well, they're dead now. And there was a mass extinction and all. And so what happens is, if I'm not getting enough of the resource that I need because my own species is outcompeting me, I may try something new, right? So if we were eating berries all the time and the berries managed to survive and all the competitors for berries died off, that's great for us. We'll eat all the berries. But as the number of my own species goes up, more and more of the berries get eaten until berries are starting to run short. And the competition within my own species for those berries gets heightened quite a bit. And so what happens is, if I'm not a very good competitor within my own species, I might try something else. Well, you know what? That tree over there survived and it has fruit on it, or nuts, or the roots of that plant over there are very tasty. I'll give those a try, right? I'd rather the berries, but I'll try these other things. So that's what happens now. And we're free to try these other ecological roles or niches, because the competition that once held those niches and ate up those resources is no longer here. And so now the door is wide open for us to try these different things. And because no one else is around, we go and we do it. And we start to become specialized at acquiring and living within that empty, unfulfilled niche. And our traits over time become more suited to that niche. And that's where the widening occurs, where we start to increase. Speciation occurs. My population of root eaters or fruit eaters no longer associates with the berry eaters that I was once part of. And that speciation, we've talked about that before, where you no longer recognize and freely interbreed with the people that were there. So you formed your own population, your own separate species. And that's what the widening is. These fit survivors diversifying and moving into empty niches and trying new things and becoming specialized at it. So it's kind of like Darwin's finches. I know we've talked about this before, right? I'm going to erase this very, very quickly. Now, Darwin's finches didn't undergo a mass extinction event, but they definitely underwent diversification. If you remember, it's time to draw another very bad map. But here's South America, sorta. There's Ecuador here, right on the equator. That's why it's called Ecuador. And the Galapagos are a series of islands here. Right? Now, here we had finches and things like parrots. Right? We've done this one before. You may remember it from an earlier lecture. Toucans, wrens, I don't know what else. Robins, we'll say robins, right? I don't know if that's a South American bird. But we've got all these birds here, plus a whole lot more. There's so many more birds that are here. But there's these ones. The finches are the only ones that get over to the Galapagos Islands. There are no other birds there. The wrens aren't there. The parrots, the toucans, the robins aren't there. Right? So that one small population of finches goes over there, and they can diversify. They can adaptively radiate and fill empty bird niches on the Galapagos Islands. right? So one single species came over. So we draw a phylogenetic tree. The original finch species came over, and then it quickly diversified and filled in all these empty niches, right? And so from the one species that's right here, we end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I remember correctly, I think it was 11 or 14, but my example only has 9 branches, so that's what I'll say for now. So one species rapidly diversified into many species because of all the empty niches that the islands provided. Well, a mass extinction does the same thing. A mass extinction might go to these things right here and go and get rid of them. And the same sort of situation would happen in South America, right? If that happened and only finches survived, well, they would radiate outwards and become all these things, right? Larger beaks, skinnier beaks for digging in trees, whatever it happened to be. But their characteristics would change so that they become better at it, acquiring these new resources that previously were unavailable because the competition, these other birds, were better at getting them. So they're like colonists, right? Colonists move to new territory and they kind of take over and set up a society, a population. The numbers of the finches explode. Whatever the finches were originally eating on the Galapagos, that probably started to, go down in terms of number or amount. And so they tried different things. And what we ended up with was, and we've used this term before, adaptive radiation. And that's where the one species became the 9. It happened with Darwin's finches. It also happens after a mass extinction event. And I'm not sure why that's doing that. It's in my brain now. I got to figure that out. Anyway, so how fast does evolution take place? Is it really, really slow, or is it really, really fast? You're probably thinking it's really, really slow because we looked at things like actualism and uniformitarianism that said environmental change and geological forces of the earth happen very, very slowly. That idea that change would be very, very slow is gradualism, right? If something happens gradually, it means it takes a long time doing it. So gradualism is one theory that explains the rate or how fast evolution would occur. It states that evolution takes place over long periods of time because the environment is pretty stable and it changes really, really slowly. And so the changes to meet the environment would accumulate very slowly as well. Right? The environment is slow and changing, so will be the divergences that create new species. Makes sense. But as we just talked about, sometimes the environment is thrown a curveball and the change has to happen very rapidly, like the mass extinction event. An asteroid hitting the Earth is a very sudden change. The finches one day were on the Galapagos Islands, and then the next day we're on South America. The next day they were on the Galapagos Islands. That's a sudden change in terms of the environment. So there's another theory called punctuated equilibrium. It states that speciation, like this, occurs in very short spurts and then is followed by long periods of time with little or no significant change. So who's the winner? Which one is correct? Gradualism or punctuated equilibrium? Well, using the fossil record and our knowledge of species, we have found that both of these theories have taken place over time. There are periods in the Earth's history where gradual, slow change would have taken place. Right? The environment is stable. We're currently in one like that. The environment is very stable. But then we see, like on the previous graph that we had earlier, sometimes there are mass extinction events like asteroids hitting the Earth. And that's a cataclysmic change within a day. And so we see both of these events. So we can't say gradualism is the way to go or punctuated equilibrium is the way to go. They both are the way to go. So here is a gradualism model of a butterfly diverging into 2 butterfly species. And so what would happen is there'd be some slowly developing change in the environment, and the population would become just a little bit different. Now, I don't know how well you can see this in the video, but if you have the PowerPoint up, you can see this one is a little bit lighter, this one's a little bit darker, to the point where they might not recognize each other anymore, and they become two separate lineages. And at the end of it, you have one that's white and brown, and another one that's almost like a rust color, right? And these would be two separate populations. But the change, the divergence, occurs very slowly. They diverge or go apart in a very gradual manner. Punctuated equilibrium says you'd have your one butterfly species, and then something sudden would happen where this one developed. Or maybe there were a few of these, but they would normally die. But now, in the new environment, they can survive. And then later on, another divergence, a sudden divergence would occur. A curveball from Mother Nature. And you'd have the development of two more. But then look what happens afterwards. Afterwards, there is little to no change. That straight upward line means little to no change. Two different means to the same ends. We still have separate species of butterfly here and here, just two different ways of representing it. Same thing shown with birds. You have an orange bird in both of these examples that would speciate or undergo speciation and diverge and become yellow and red, or in this case, yellow, red, and orange birds, right? One, they continuously become different from each other gradually over time. The other one is you have one line, boom, the event occurs, and then the lines go straight. There's very little change. And then another event occurred, boom, we've got the red birds. And again, very little change after that. All right? Anyway, there's Jesus. We could always use little Jesus in our lives. And that's it. That's the end of our lecture. So, that's it for evolution. Hopefully you enjoyed the unit. If there's any questions, comments, or concerns, you can fill them in the comment section below this video on YouTube. Or if you're one of my students, reach out to me via Edsby, and I'll get back to you right away. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was clear. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.